Okay, everybody, let's start out with our MSYSA webinar. Glad that everybody's joining us, and of course there'll be more people popping on as we go through the hour. I'm Mark Cantor, the MSYSA president. I just wanted to go over a few guidelines for those that have not been on this call. Please listen in the mute mode, unless you're speaking, of course. Use the chat feature if you have any questions. And please be respectful and announce yourself and your affiliation before you speak. So in the ever-changing soccer landscape, counties are doing their own thing based on their county executive and county council. Some counties have put soccer at a high risk, which is ridiculous. There is some lobbying going on in the background. It's not that successful, trying to convince some of the people that are making these decisions that soccer is not a high risk sport. I think lacrosse is a medium risk sport, and that's where we should be with them. But it's people who make these decisions that are driving us all crazy. So anybody who has any clout with any of your county executives or politicians in your area, it would be great to send them a note letting them know that they really should reconsider, because it's driving a lot of the soccer clubs crazy because no one knows what to do. We just got information this morning that Baltimore County Department of Recs has now came out with new guidelines that they're not allowed to do any throw-ins. So we don't know what that means. That's just another idiotic decision from somebody out there that just making it very difficult for soccer people to do what we do best. So as we are so frustrated as a state association because there's no clarity, it changes daily, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. We feel your pain because we know you're going with it too, going with the same aggravation that we're dealing with. So that's one of the reasons why we like to do these webinars, to kind of keep everybody in tune of what's happening. We can learn from you guys, you can learn from us, we're all in it together. And so just bear with us. There'll be more information later on down the hour. But we're happy today to report that we have another guest speaker that's going to be interesting to hear from. Richie Burke has been kind enough to spend some time with us. Richie is an advanced UEFA and USSF qualified coach with years of professional experience as a player in 3 continents and as a first-team coach in the MLS and the Scottish Professional Football League. Currently, Richie is the head coach of the Washington Spirit, spearheading the emergence of the boys program for FC Virginia and working with DC United as the U23 head coach. Richie has worked in local media, ESPN radio, as an expert analyst for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, and has experience in matches reporting for the Washington area media group. He is the head coach and technical director of the Washington Spirit from January 2019 to the present. He is the head coach at DC United U23s, as I previously mentioned. He was the manager of the Livingston Football Club in Scotland while they were in the Scottish Championship. And Richie hails from Altoona, Pennsylvania, but he has a thick accent. So we don't know where he got that accent. But Richie, welcome aboard, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mark. I appreciate it very, very much. I could just qualify that whilst I'd love to have the scope to be able to work with the Washington Spirit professional team and DC United under 23 team, those 2 jobs are mutually exclusive, and I can only do one of those. So I'm currently focused very much on the Washington Spirit and working with them in the NWSL. This season's been a challenging one for us all in leadership roles, and I'm happy to share with all of you some of the challenges that we've had to meet at the football club and how we've progressed our players during this very trying time. So again, I appreciate the invitation. I thank Alan very much for reaching out to me and inviting me on board. and I'm happy to answer questions or elaborate in whatever way you'd like me to do so.
Awesome, appreciate it, Richie. So I think the first question is obviously going back to the beginning prior to sort of everything kicking off, or should I say that the start of sort of COVID. What situation were you in, and obviously what was it like for you in your environment? Obviously the professional environment's different than the youth, but again, what kind of situation were you in, and what did you have to what challenges did you have to sort of get over in that early stage?
It's a great opening question, because our situation was very, very unique, and I'm sure that none of the youth coaches out here would have encountered these circumstances. We were actually away as a collective in our warm weather camp in Sandpiper Bay, Florida. And we had, all of our players, with the exception of Rose Lavelle, was away with the national team in She Believes. So was Andy Sullivan. And they were due to join us on the Sunday after the She Believes tournament was finished. But we were in Florida, and we had periodized our entire 33 weeks of the season. It was our warm weather camp for 14 days. And 4 days in, boom, COVID hit. And we were away in a resort area that was slowly but surely being shut down. People were heading out like rats leaving a sinking ship. And we found ourselves in this Club Med facility being catered to alone, a 35, 40 people group. And we were not allowed to train with the players. Beautiful fields, beautiful setup. And we now were forced by the league mandate to not train with players. So we prescribed through that. They have an app on their phones, a team builder app. Our high performance coach prescribed workouts for them. They could only work in smaller groups of 6. So we had to segment training. Some were in the gym, some were in running, some were on the field. But we as coaching staff couldn't actually, connect with them in any way. We had to be distance coaching. So we were there for probably 10 days before we came back. And as soon as we got back into the Maryland area, it was lockdown. They were immediately in lockdown. And at that stage, we scheduled, and I think everybody became expert in this area on Zoom calls. We actually used the WebEx feature. So we were using groups of 6 players in WebEx meetings on a daily basis. We were again prescribing workouts via their Team Builder app. We delivered to their apartments food, because we needed to keep them well fed. Nutrition was a big piece for our high performance coach. And we delivered TRX bands, weights, and as much equipment as we could to keep them active during a 5-6 week period where they were denied access to training grounds, they were denied access to each other, and we were forced to keep players in market in their apartments, but inactive. That was a really tough test at the beginning.
Cool. And so, how did the players react to that? I mean, obviously, I think it was like a new norm, wasn't it? Or a new sort of environment for everybody. And I think there was kind of a sparkle at the beginning, but it became, certainly in the youth level, going into sort of this virtual world, became kind of old school very quickly. Obviously you're dealing with professionals, so they're used to that sort of personal regime of, training on their own. But, what was the sort of team chemistry and stuff like that? What are some ideas that you came up with to keep the spirits up and keep them engaged and together, really create that unity?
It was a tough one, especially for players who, first year professionals, rookies in the league. This is your first introduction to professional sports, and you're in lockdown and you're stuck in an apartment, you can't get out. So we were fearful that, some of the rookies and some of the younger players are new to the football club wouldn't have that connection, wouldn't understand what our core values were, wouldn't understand, how we wanted to progress them during this period. So, we would visit their apartments and take sushi to them and have conversations with them, play games with them. And our high performance coach and some of the assistants came up with challenges for them, whether they were juggling challenges, fitness challenges, and actual tactical challenges. So we have the benefit of having a Y Scout platform that all the players have access to review video. And that video review became homework for them. So we would now prescribe a game, ask them to analyze a game, ask them to analyze certain players' participation and review clips from the games. So the engagement level from the players during that period was significant. It was higher than we had anticipated. given that, you know, these players, the three things that are most important to them are obviously the playing games, the participation with their teammates, and the activity around the club and the dressing room. And all those three important pieces were removed from them. We spent a lot of time speaking to our sports psychologist, and she was absolutely fantastic. In fact, I would say that she single-handedly guided me through this process and kept me on the positive side when it was very easy to be negative and very easy to be disheartened. And she was absolutely fantastic. And a lot of conversations I had with her translated into conversations with the players too. So, and she was the one that recommended, look, Richie, go and pick up a meal for them, show up at their apartment, just be present, just have and at that stage, you know, we didn't have to wear masks and we were not social distancing to that extent. We were still in sort of our team bubble.
Yeah.
And our medical doctors had prescribed certain amounts of activities for us that we were restricted to. But getting to see some of the players and clearly seeing their reaction when you showed up and you had conversations with them, especially the rookies who were struggling at this time, it was great. It was important.
Awesome. Now, if I mean, obviously there's concerns about this sort of second wave and going back, you know, having to go backwards. Would you do anything different as opposed to what you did back then? Have you kind of learned from there? What things would you put into place if we do have to start going backwards?
You know, we will learn some valuable lessons. You know, not many of them were negative, where we would say we need to stop doing that, we need to avoid that. I think the players were very outspoken in you know the meals. So we provided meals to them in 3-day blocks, and when you're providing, you know, there's only so many variations on a theme. There's only so many ways you can do chicken or pasta for them. So you know, that was one of the areas where I think we'd maybe do something a little bit different. It was difficult for our high performance coach and our nutritionist to work through a schedule of meals that you know could keep them focused through that period. So the nutrition piece, the sleep patterns, their biorhythms of training were all the pieces that we needed to look at and make sure that they were not all over the place. We didn't want players train at certain times during the day, to create some form of discipline for them, biological discipline with nutrition and sleep patterns and activity patterns.
Right.
So those things I think we would probably mandate a little bit more, because we found when the players came out of their isolation period, we had an awful lot of neutralizing to do to get everybody back and reload them, because they were all over the place. Their biorhythms really created some difficulty for us. So I think we'd probably mandate differently now, again, the timing of their day, their daily routines.
Yeah, I think that was important at the youth level as well, right? And that consistency in the times that you know, because obviously they were doing virtual learning at school. And so I think in the beginning, everybody's schedule, especially for kids, the importance of that schedule is critical, right? And keeping them engaged on a sort of routine. You know, they're used to going to practices twice a week or whatever it is. And so that routine and the consistency is the key for, you know, sort of creating, but keeping that unity and that the spirits up, I guess, of the players. So as you go into, I mean, obviously talk about now, obviously as it started to progress, how did you start to prepare for the tournament? What were the next sort of steps as we progress through, you know, the challenges of COVID?
You know, there were phases that the league imposed upon all teams. We were no different than anybody else. So the progression from small group training or household training, you know, players who were living in the same household. And that was a challenge for us as coaches, because when you've got a squad of 26 players and you now have to segment that down to groups of 3, 2 groups of 3 on the field together, we were actually training from 8 till 9:30, 10 till 11:30, 12 to 1:30, and 2 to 3:30 in 90-minute blocks. And the players had to be transported to a remote facility that was out of the way of the media, out of the way of the public eye. It was a remote facility away from the soccerplex, which was our home, where we couldn't train. And they were transported in our club vehicles. And in between transportation, those vehicles need to be sanitized. So there was a drop-off point at the venue. The car would drive around, they'd be sanitized, and they'd go head back and pick up players from their apartments and bring them back out. So we had logistical issues to resolve. We had medical issues to resolve. And then, of course, we have training issues to resolve. And some of the challenges for us were when you have a household that has a goalkeeper, a defender, and a forward, trying to get some, tactical training plans in place was difficult. Technically, you can work on individual techniques, but anything tactical or functional relative to their positions was a real challenge. It wasn't until we were allowed to actually move people across groups, and now we could group them in accordance with their function or functionality within our team, did we start to see some successes. But it was evident from the beginning that the players were just happy to be out on the field. Yeah. And we had that natural surge of adrenaline and energy to begin with that we needed to control, because we didn't want them to get out right away and burn out. We had a progression and a periodization in plan with the Challenge Cup on the horizon for us. So we went from, groups of 3 into groups of 6, into groups of 8, and then into groups of 10. And the entire time we had to, keep raising the bar and moving both the physical challenges for them, the technical challenges for them, and introducing little pieces that were team tactical training that were difficult because of the smaller groups. But eventually we moved into phase 3, which allowed us for full team training. And that was a godsend. That was an absolute godsend when you really want to get players prepped for a tournament the magnitude of the Challenge Cup. So, I can honestly say the high performance coach that we have is very, very good. And the fact that he kept them on a positive track physically in preparing them for that tournament was real kudos to him.
Yeah, that's great. I know, and obviously, I guess the sports psychologist is a big part of the game now, right? And I think, the software, the mental, social aspect has been a real, I guess, is what's been the real, challenge, I guess, for all of us, including the youth side. That's been something that I think a lot of coaches, we've gone from this sort of being very focused on tech and training sessions and this, that, and the other. I think this has really forced us to start to think about the mental and social aspects of being a coach and being able to, adapt and keep the spirits and really sort of create better connections, I guess, with their players, because they're forced into this Zoom world and really dealing with individuals. So probably no different than obviously for you guys in the beginning. So
at the youth level, we spend an awful lot of time working from the neck down. But we spend a very little time working from the neck up. Yeah. It's an important piece, especially for a developing youngster. Their competitive nature has to be nurtured in the right way. Yeah. And in your broad spectrum of players that you have on your teams or in your groups, or even in your entire football clubs, there are a variety of that range. You have to make sure that, it's not a one-size-fits-all methodology. It really doesn't work that way, especially as they go through the different stages of development in their cognitive ability. Yeah. So, those 4 pillars are key in the psychological piece, right? The cognitive, coordinative, psychosocial, and physiological. If you don't get all of that balance right at this youth level, and how you relate the real cognitive piece and their mental piece, you don't get a good product on the field. And it's not any longer about just being a very good tactical coach or being somebody who treats players and teaches some fantastic technical skills. It's a holistic approach now. You have to develop the entire youth person, the kid. You have to develop the kid. And this period for me in terms of professional development, I would encourage every single one of your coaches to make sure that you are advancing yourself or doing enough research on the mental side of how you can help people in a sports psychology perspective. Because even the top players, Rose Lavelle was clear with me and said, Richie, I would have tanked badly at the World Cup had I not had access to my sports psychologist on a regular basis. It's a reinforcement. And again, she outlined to me, and again, defining processes to deal with negativity and to be able to compartmentalize difficulties. Rose has a process by which, and we talked about this because in the Challenge Cup, she missed a real sitter, and we had a conversation about it. And what she did to deal with it was to write it in her book, make a note of it, close that book, and that's it done. Yeah. The next time she opens the book, she deals with the next issue that created some degree of negativity. So simple processes. I think many of us have watched the Michael Jordan documentary recently, and he was the same thing about taking notes. So there are things that you pick up from sports psychologists that are invaluable, that in many aspects, coaches don't think about that. They can't wait to get back on the training ground. They can't wait to get the balls out. They can't wait to get the cones out. But the piece that from the neck up is just as important as the rest of the body.
Yeah, and it's a critical factor in, like you say, in them having they are skills as well, right? Mental skills need to be worked at. It's not just something we're changing the habits of the players, right? They don't do that naturally, and I guess having that person and that constant reminder is a critical factor. So, what about in terms of these players are obviously role models to the youth, and I know some of the girls that they did a lot of sort of outside work in terms of being on webinars and and engaging with youth players. How did their roles sort of change as players during this time? Because obviously there's no crowd, and the kids are not getting access to them physically. But what kind of work did they have to do to I guess keep the supporters happy, right? And reach out to those players. What kind of work did they do sort of off the field?
And let me say, you categorically, and having been a former professional player, having been in the men's professional game, and now in the women's professional game, categorically, our players, female players, are the absolute best ambassadors for the game by a million miles. They are so amenable. They identify with these youth players very quickly. Whereas, and it's not castigating the men. The men have a tendency to be a little bit aloof. The female players, they do not. They can't wait to speak to the young players. They identify with them on so many levels and can speak to them on so many levels. I've watched our players walk around an entire stadium and never, ever fail to stop to sign an autograph, to engage a player. I've never seen that happen on the men's side. I've never seen that happen at an international level ever. But we have players who can't wait to do that. They love that aspect. Yeah. So when we ask them, and when we have a marketing division to ask them to, try and connect with youth clubs, to try and connect to small groups or teams, they jumped all over it. There was never any resistance. There was never anybody calling, "Oh, Richie, I don't really want to do that. Oh, Richie, I can't be bothered doing it. Oh, Richie." They were like, "Oh, yeah, I'll do that one, Richie." I'd call and say, "Hey, we have this outreach to one of these groups. Are you up? Oh, absolutely, I'll do that one." There was never any negativity. And they can't wait to actually connect with a fan base. Yeah. And for me, it's not humbling, but it's really uplifting to see that our players have that type of attitude. They genuinely love the fan base and people that come to watch them play. It was missing. It was a huge piece missing in the Challenge Cup. And we talked about it as a group after some of the games that, again, it's a psychological aspect. They're looking in the crowd. They want to get that adulation. They want to get that support and that rush that they get from people calling their name or supporting them. And we had to deal with that piece as well, because some players need that a little bit more than others. Yeah. And for us in particular, we never had a problem trying to get our players to engage, ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think we undervalue that a lot of the time at youth clubs is, the importance of role models. I mean, I know obviously growing up in England, we, as kids, were constantly, whenever you play, you were assigned or you assigned yourself a player name, and you were always acting out, being that player. And I think something here that, clubs should, I think clubs should engage more in, right, in terms of encouraging role models and the connection between the professional game. So I think that's a critical component. Is there anything that the Spirit are doing right now in terms of the connection piece with fans that the clubs can engage in that you know of, or if you have the contact info that we can put out maybe on the chat feature for clubs to be able to get in touch with the marketing department, where they can support. I know they do have something that they connect with the youth groups, correct?
Yeah, we do. And again, I try to get involved as much as I possibly can, because I think it's huge for us. I think the reason I'm involved with you as a friend and as supporter of what you're doing is because I think this is the lifeblood of our sport. If we don't have this participation, we don't have this connection, we don't have people in the typical levels in football throughout. It doesn't work at the top level. We're blessed and fortunate to be at that top level. Without these rungs beneath us, we're nothing. We can have an ownership group that will pay us, but we need to have the support structure underneath. I'm huge. I was lucky to be a professional footballer, and I remember always being kept exclusively away. It's not like we've got these secrets, or it's not like we're at this elite level. We keep people away, and I disagree with that. I'm more than happy to have anybody from MYSA come out and watch our training sessions. They'll have to social distance. They'll have to stand on the hill. They'll have to do whatever. But we start training next week, and our players have been starved of connection to the youth players. We're happy to have people come out and watch. We have a coordinator at our football club that coordinates visits to training so that the players can connect. We're thinking now of ways that we can, have a perspex glass opportunity for players to talk across the perspex glass, because this is a needed piece for us. But we have people at our football club that I can certainly connect you with. We are, and we want to be, a people's club. We want to be a club that people look at and say, they are worthy of our support because they try to do it right. We never shun the opportunity to work and connect, because we know, and I at the helm, I've said it all along, the youth movement and people involved in the youth game, people running all these youth clubs, they are the lifeblood of this sport. I've been there, I've been involved in it, and I know what it takes, the commitment, and without them, the professional game doesn't exist in this country. It just does not exist.
And that's, I think, something for us as an ODP is certainly something that we can, on the coaching side as well as the player side. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll be working with Gandalf to try and see if we can get teams or groups of coaches out there. So that would
be a great opportunity to be able to do that. Richie, there's one question by we have a very intelligent board. One of our board members has a question for you. Eric McAleer's question was, what does the RB mean on your jacket?
Right back. Or a real BSer. I'm not quite sure which one it means.
It's definitely the second one, Richie.
That's right. You know what? I knew someone like you would have to come up with that. I was a little bit leery about wearing this one, but I had to know what spirit was. So good spot, Eric, mate. Well done.
Any questions? Any questions for Richie? No questions?
Oh, imagine.
Anything else, Richie, you feel that, it's kind of important to any of the sort of club leaders, or anything that we haven't really touched base on that you think is important?
Well, we have a question here. Tudor.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for organizing this. Hi, Richie.
Hi.
Hi, Alan. Hey, I coach under 17 and under 18 girls, and for our club, that is huge because they're the older, girls in the club. And during this time, we worked, on some sort of buddy system, especially with the younger, girls in the club, and try to make those connections to support them. And I know you mentioned, working above the neck and below the neck. Can you just expand a little bit how we could sort of impact that, connections with the younger?
One of the things that even at the professional level that work great with us were these challenges. And you find that when players are denied that competitive edge, they want to play in the games, it's that competition. Right. Our players had incredible buy-in, and we debated whether or not they'd be interested in doing the physical challenges or the technical challenges. And at the end of it, we were just inundated. They were taking videos of themselves and clips of themselves, which is how this young breed now operate. And we found that it was becoming increasingly difficult for us to continue to review so much video, because the players would find out, well, Jordan DiBiase scored an 84 and they've got a 76. Well, they're sending another, I'm going to beat that one. I'm going to beat 84. So we were constantly receiving more and more challenges. And I would say that's the best way for the older players to connect to the younger players. If you give an older player 5 players and say, you're my 5, we are going to, collectively score to see if my 5 can beat my teammates' 5 players over on that side. So we, with our leadership group, we assigned them, they each had to have an international player, a rookie, a second-year pro, and what was the other category? We had 4 categories, and each of our team leaders had to select a player from the squad to fit into their little subgroup. And if you do the same with your older players and say, we're going to take an under 14 team and we're going to divide it, we'll have 5 of our under 17s, under 18s, and we'll subdivide the under 14 team, and they will be yours. And you can devise challenges. And I'm not just talking about the physical challenges, whether it's a press-up or push-up contest, whether it's a sit-up contest, or whether it's a running contest, whether it's a tactical contest as well. Get them to review a game and send the best goal they've seen and analyze a goal. You can find so many ways to integrate the groups and create a natural mentorship that I think it will work very, very well on both sides, because, you know, mentorship works in both directions. The kids who are being mentored enjoy it, but the mentors themselves, they find benefit in it too. And I would encourage you to do something along those lines. We found that incredibly beneficial, even at the professional level, and it created much better bonds and ties within the team.
It's awesome.
Any other questions for Richie? Here's one from a board member, Eric McAleer. Wants to know if you would be able to fit into that jersey behind you, number 4.
That is my Washington Warthogs jersey. And Eric is right. I was probably 25 pounds lighter back then. I mean, I could put it on right now, but it would not be a pretty sight, I have to tell you.
Richie, you know he's throwing me under the bus with those questions.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that, mate.
Eric,
Richie, I'll jump in with a question here. Certainly, you know, you and I have known each other a long time, and I kind of lived through very closely your time you spent in Scotland.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a little insight to, you know, you rose up to the first team full professional level with international players, you know, on that scale, and now to where you are to you know, just now managing our full-time professional club. Was there a lot of comparisons, or was it chalk and cheese to what you're dealing with just now, Richie?
It's a great question. You know, there are some comparisons, because when you actually coach and operate at a professional level, if you're not organized and you're not structured in everything that you do, whether your leadership is defined by, you know, your core values, your stages of creating a culture, you have to be very prepared. And I would advocate that every single youth team coach in the MYSA realm has a process by which they create their team culture, their team methodology, their team core values, all of the things that define how you coach. And at a professional level, they're integral. They're basic. If you don't have them, then you fail miserably at the professional level. But there are some definite comparisons between European men and American females that create the chalk and cheese analogy. You know, yeah. And I'm going to say, you know, with fear of being attacked on this one, the female players are massively more cerebral. You cannot lie to them. They will remember, well, Richie, on Tuesday, at 6 o'clock, you said this, and you have to be able to qualify everything that you are telling them. They hold you accountable, and you have to be way smarter. With the guys, you can BS them, you can lie to them, you can just, and they'll go fight. They'll go to the battle, they'll go do it for you. The females will not go fight for you if you don't qualify exactly why are we going into this fight? How are we going to beat them? What way are we going to do this? They are way more strategic and way more analytical. And those two things for me in particular were areas that I realized you have to grow, you have to develop, you have to be better. You have to be more thoughtful in any presentation. Sometimes you can go and present to the team and you're about to play Rangers at Ibrox and it's a cup game and you know you've got to rah-rah get them going and motivate them because you're playing against a team that's got a significantly higher budget than you with a spectator base of 40,000 people and you're about to get smashed. And if you don't motivate them, you're in a bit of trouble. But and they'll go and fight. The players will go and fight without really giving them much other than, let's go do this for the badge, let's go play. With the female players, you have to say, we're going to go play two-time national champion North Carolina Courage. They operate this way. In order for us to counter them, we need to be doing this, this, and this. We need your role to be very key in this way we play. And then the female players have the buy-in. Then they say, okay, we'll do that. and it's massively different. But at the professional level, there are so many things that, you know, and I'm happy to get with Alan and talk about some of the things in terms of presentation that you have to have at a professional level, and you know, being able to periodize your training. We planned 33 weeks right throughout the entire season for 24 matches and plugged them in. So nothing is left to choice. There is tweaking and there is changing that goes on. But if you're not that ahead of the game, you fail at a top level. And I would say that some of that translates to the youth level and forces coaches to be an awful lot more prepared. Instead of driving to the training ground with your balls in the back and the cones and say, I'm going to work on this today. I really like that drill. We're going to use that today. Those days do not serve players. Those days are gone, and they don't serve players better. You have to be prepared. You have to be sort of curriculum driven. You have to understand what you want to try and get across. Because if you don't do that at a professional level, they will find you out in a heartbeat.
Thank you for that, Richie. I'm actually going to answer a question that's just been asked by Rob Ryerson. So Rob Ryerson's asked a question in the chat box. He said, who was your favourite teammate of Washington Warthogs? So I'm going to answer that on your behalf, Richie. I think it'd be either Daryl G or Steve Powers, but you can finish off your response, Richie.
Robbie Ryerson is by far my best friend. Robbie Ryerson, by the way, what a fantastic indoor player and outdoor player he was. He was a great teammate, and I love the guy. Robbie, thanks for that question, mate. But you know, my roommate when we traveled away was Manny Matajo, the Nigerian, right? And that in itself was an eye-opener. You know, Manny is very religious, and he would kneel beside his bed praying before we went to sleep over night time, and he'd be like, Richie, I'm saying some prayers for you. Listen, mate, I think that might be a bit of a waste because I'm taking the elevator down when it comes to it. But yeah, Rob, what a good team that was.
Richie, here's another quick question. Can Richie share a little bit about the team's experience at the tournament in Utah? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Wow. It was a lot of each. When you're locked down in a hotel, we were in the Embassy Suites Hotel and couldn't go out. It was referred to as the NWSL Village. There were 4 teams: ourselves, the Courage, Portland Thorns, and Chicago, all in the same hotel. We each had a floor that you were not allowed on. So, you know, you each had a designated area where you had to eat. You couldn't go into somebody else's designated area. Masks were mandatory the entire time. The food was absolutely horrendous. And we had players like, I think Rose Lavelle might have actually bought shares in PF Chang's. She ordered out every other day into PF Chang's. But they discovered there's a cookie place out there called Crumble. And the players were getting these cookies, and they are so addictive. They're incredibly addictive. That was a huge positive because they were knockout great. But I'll tell you a funny story that you know, it was a little bit of mischievous. I was a little bit put out sometimes because you try to get into the elevator and you couldn't get into an elevator with somebody from the other team. So they'd either get out and you get in, or they're in it and you have to wait for the next one to come. So it was frustrating to me. And sometimes the elevator would stop on a floor that wasn't your team floor. And as you look out, there's the banner with Chicago Red Stars, or, you know, so it identified right away what floor you're on. So I got a little bit annoyed at this. I'm thinking, you know what? I've had enough of this. 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up, went downstairs, got on the elevator and moved all the banners. So when people open the elevator door, they're like, oh, this is supposed to be floor. We're supposed to be the Portland Thorns. What's that flag doing there? So we had coordinators in the hotel, and when I came downstairs, they were like, you know what, Richie, somebody moved the banners last night. We really apologize for that. But it was actually me. I was so fed up at these mental restrictions. So you found a way to have a good time, to enjoy yourself. You were a little bit, you know, bothered by not being able to go outside and stay in the hotel the entire time. And it drove you mad to only be able to socialize in certain areas of the hotel. So I can only imagine what it was like for some of the players. We tried to do a lot of video, a lot of team meetings, game days where we played, you know, bananagrams and different games where the players would play with each other. So that was a huge challenge. There were good, bad, and ugly bits about the whole thing. But it was great for us as a team to be able to play, because the alternative really wasn't that attractive. To have a professional team go an entire season without playing any games at all, that would have been devastating for the football club and devastating for the squad.
Yeah.
All right, so let's like to appreciate Richie coming on and spending quite a bit of time with us today. It was really interesting hearing the stories and the motivation, and what I liked about it is hopefully we can get some of our teams to scheduled to come over and watch you guys train. That would be great. That would be a lot of fun for the association. But if there's no other questions, we're going to thank Richie for coming aboard. We'd love to have you back again, Richie. And
let me say, I put together for America Scores a presentation that is like a style of play or a methodology that we have. I'm happy to do that for Alan and the coaches if that's something you'd like to do.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
The presentation in this format, and it goes through all of the technical pieces. I think for coaches in particular, it will have some value. Either they take out of it just some structure that they want to put into their own club or their own teams. I'm happy to share that with you as well.
And Richie, Eric Mackler didn't ask those questions. We were just joking.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Richie, I ddid.
It was me.
He wanted to. I know for sure he wanted to.
Thanks again for coming on, and we'd love to have you back again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Richie.
Appreciate it. Cheers, Richie.
Take care.
Thanks, Richie. Cheers, man.
Bye, Richie.
Thanks, Rich.
See you.
All right, so next on the agenda, I'd like to have Executive Director of MSYSA, Flo Egan, going to give a quick report on a few topics. Go ahead, Flo.
Hi, everybody. 2 topics I want to talk about today, and most of them are just reminders. One has to do with, obviously, we're in the season of, very unpredictable weather that comes up really quick. So I want to make sure all the members in the clubs know that we do have on our website under the tab of Safe Soccer, required policies, and there is a weather policy up there. U.S. Soccer, under their Recognize to Recover, they have an extensive outline of all types of weather and recommendations for clubs. So any leadership in the clubs, I encourage you to check with your coaches and make sure there's several weather apps that you can now download onto your cell phones to watch their practices, the trainings, the scrimmages, because we know, and there have been incidents where players have been hurt, or they'll panic and run under trees and try to stand under trees, what have you. But it's a recommendation now that we're in the heat and everyone's trying to get back out there, that you really be cautious with weather when you're out there training, and utilize the safety tools that we have in place. And of course, anybody that's hosting a tournament, you should already have an emergency plan, including weather-related issues, built into your tournament protocols. We just want to make sure everyone is kept safe while they're out there on the fields. The other topic I need to talk about is Safe Sport. Once again, we're in the process of registering players and coaches to participate within the teams and the clubs. The Safe Sport area, it's not something that we can just assume everybody's doing. We as a state association, we have no wiggle room to overlook any type of compliance. U.S. Soccer requires us to, in this area, to have our sport buttoned up tight. It's for the safety of the minors, and it's a risk management and a liability concerns. So, according to the Safe Sport Code, any athlete 18 years or older is considered an adult. U.S. Youth Soccer is now mandating that anyone over 18 years or older that participates in any of their events must complete the Safe Sport training. That includes the National League, the NCS Cup competition, President's Cup, ODP, anybody that's over 18. So MSYSA, we've taken the steps through our registration platform, and we embedded those, just like with coaches, we embedded the compliance issues in there. So when a player goes into log on to their account, They will be able to take the training, obviously at no cost. It's set for players that are born in the 2002 birth year, who will turn 18 in 2020. And the reason we did that is because we don't want to, we can't go back and monitor every day when every player's birthday is, because they need to take it within 45 days of their birthday. So we just made it 2002 birth year, have them take the compliance. And then when they register for State Cup as a team, you register for any of the events that we have, your players will already be in compliance. And of course, anyone that's older, born before 2002, should also be required to take that training. If you have a U19, 19U team comprised of 18 years or older, and you possibly are going to add a younger player to that team, you can recommend the younger player complete the training as well, but they will need parental permission. Once they turn 18, they're fine. But under 18, they can take it, but they do need their parents' permission to do it. And since USU Soccer expanded the age groups this year to include the 20s, 20 under, players born in 2001, we're thinking we may see, because of high school and high school and college being kind of either canceled or postponed, that we may see an uptick in some older players that want to get together, play in whether it's an older recreational league, whether it's play club ball. But we just want to make sure that everyone is in compliance. And when they're taking the compliance piece can be completed, and it's no cost to them. The code is already embedded into our platform, as well as our NGO, and which is US Soccer. And it also helps if you have older teams in your club that are now, you want to work with the younger players, right? If you have older players that are 18 or older, they should be taking that training so that they're now in compliance when working with the younger kids on the field. We believe to err on the side of caution is the best route to keep everyone safe. And we as a state association through US Soccer said we're just not allowed to take somebody's word or just receive a list of names that say, list of names from a club or an entity saying, oh yeah, these guys are good, we made sure. Because if anything ever happened, we would be held liable. Because we, just like, a burglar. Well, I didn't burglarize your house. Well, okay, he didn't. How do you know? Because he said so. So we have to make sure, if we can't verify it ourselves, we can be held liable should any incident occur. So I know it's kind of frustrating to ask everyone over the age of 18 to take this safe sport training. It's 90 minutes the first year, and then every year it's a 20-minute review. But if it keeps one kid safe out on the pitch, it's well worth it. Those are two things I wanted to make sure, reminders and updates. Make sure everybody knows.
Thank you, Flo.
Yep.
Next, our program director, Gandalf French, wants to do a quick summary of our upcoming ODP tryouts that are happening very shortly. Gandalf?
Thanks, Mark. So we have our ODP tryouts are starting again this fall on the second weekend of September. They are in areas of the state that are open for full contact play. We're really excited to be getting back out there. Obviously, some of these players haven't been playing, with their clubs through the spring. So being able to get them out there this fall is something that we're really looking forward to. Registration for the tryouts is available on our website. Registration numbers are looking good. We fully believe that the program is going to move forward, as normal in the past as much as possible, obviously with any potential changes coming up. But so far, things are looking good. Staff is very nearly complete. Been working with Alan Lydiate on that the past couple of weeks as well. If anybody has questions about ODP, I'm always willing to jump on the call and discuss with you guys. But we're getting ready to get started. Looking forward to it. And if you have any players that that you would recommend coming out from your club, we're happy to have them come out to try out. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Any questions for Gandalf before we move on? Okay, our last speaker of the day will be our technical director, Director of Coaching, Alan Lydiate, who has a informational report on face masks and the different criteria that we need for return to play updates. Go ahead, Alan.
Appreciate it. Cheers, Mark. Yeah, just a quick one. I think we sent out, we've made some more adjustments to the return to play guidelines. So I just kind of want to quickly go over that just to give you a little bit of feedback. The first one was centered around the face mask. There were some concerns, you know, what does it mean? What does the governors mean? You know, governor's statement, I guess nearly 2 weeks ago now, with the face coverings. So we just put some clarity in there around what the mandate was from the state association. However, you know, back to each county government is making their own decision. So again, this inside the return to play is essentially based off the state guidelines, and then obviously you have to find your own. You know, you have to go to your own local authorities and check to see if they've had any additional, you know, such as Baltimore City, where they required masks, you know, consistently, even whilst they're playing, you know, and some other areas are kind of following suit too. So we just put the general piece in for the coaches, a little bit for the players, and what the expectations are for the parents. And again, this is what we, you know, presume from the state governors mask requirement. Obviously, again, you have to go to your local authorities. The second one was some of the clubs have been reaching out and, you know, trying to make their own decisions in their own environments in terms of, you know, how they want to implement the guidelines. And some of them were getting kickback from the parents because, you know, they would, you know, essentially sending the return to play guidelines from the state, or the parents were using that and saying, well, it doesn't say that in our, you know, in the return to play guidelines. So what we've done is we added in, you know, just a little excerpt there, just to let them know that, you know, each club has the, I guess, the authority to make their own decisions and their own requirements based off of the guidelines. So it gives you a little bit more of a reinforcement if you need to go to the parents, you know, and hopefully backs you up as a club, just to let them know that you may be able to change some of those guidelines to suit your own needs. So it says, in the interest of the player, coach, and parent safety, clubs may, at their discretion, implement social, physical distancing and face covering guidelines that go above and beyond the recommendations in this document. So hopefully that just provides a little bit more support for the coaches if you're making decisions that are maybe not listed here in the document. Okay, so that was really the two updates. I'm sure there's going to be more off of today's announcement. When we mentioned earlier with Baltimore County now saying there's no use of no throw-ins, so no use of the hands. So we'll look into that, and obviously it's on a day-to-day basis right now, and we'll see what pans out of that. But those are the two most recent. Is there any questions right now centered around you know, COVID or challenges that you're facing? One thing I do want to ask, I had a call with Tim Ryson yesterday, and Tim sent me a PowerPoint with some great ideas. I haven't been through it fully yet. Kind of centered around, obviously, there's a good chance that we're going to have to go backwards, right? Phase 2, phase 1, and we may even get to phase 0 as we get through the fall, or maybe going into winter. So really trying to prepare for that, and some ideas centered around how we can support the clubs and give value if that happens. So I'll be kind of taking it to the board and looking at the presentation, and then obviously discussing with Tim. But I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to share some resources that will help support you as clubs and how to give value if these things take place. So Tim, do you want to just elaborate a little bit on that? Like I say, I haven't been through the full document, but if you just kind of want to
Sure. Yeah, just real quick. I didn't know I'd be speaking, but yeah, I mean, appreciate the opportunity, but I think we just need to be prepared, right, for any phase. And so I was able to work with 3 Harvard students that were at home because of COVID, and they were soccer players. They ran the girls soccer club team at Harvard, and they put together some really good value add propositions during these phases. So if anybody's interested in that, they can certainly reach out to me.
Yeah, and like I say, I'll be kind of dissecting, and then obviously I can, maybe we can add, a piece to this, one of these calls, maybe in a couple of weeks, just to dissect some of that and provide a little bit more information. So, Tim, if you want to put your info in the chat feature for everyone. But again, like I say, once we delve into it a little bit more deeper, maybe something we can have on the call future down the line. So any other questions centered around COVID or any concerns that you have right now, any challenges that you've been facing that we may not be aware of? Again, you can either open up or put them in the chat.
Okay, sounds like no questions. So we'll go into our final stage of good and welfare. Anybody want to bring anything up while we're chatting? Any reports about how your clubs are doing? What type of agendas in the different counties that might be either helping or hurting your cause? Anybody have any comments? I guess not.
But I have one.
Sorry, time's up, Julio.
Okay. We're probably going backwards. It's probably more likely they're going to go backwards now on all of this, the COVID. I hear some players and some teams are going out of state to play. Do the complete teams, they need to quarantine before do something? The reason I'm asking you is because a team went us to scrimmage them, and I know they went to play in New Jersey. And I know they got some states that need to be quarantined when they come back before we can even play against them. So any ideas or recommendations?
I think you're talking about teams that are going across states. I mean, obviously there's some, there are some guidelines out there if you're playing outside of state. Is there any quarantine rules, Flo, that you know of if you're coming back from a particular state, or are there any sanctions right now of states that we can't play in? I think Virginia, it might be centered around the Virginia one that you saw, Julio.
Okay.
They released an announcement essentially talking about teams that were planning to go out of state to play tournaments. So
Yeah.
I think they were just announcing some of the states that were essentially, I guess, in lockdown.
Maryland right now doesn't have any restrictions if you're coming into Maryland from another state. Some of the other states, like I know because I own a home in New Jersey, that New Jersey has 31 states on their list. If you're coming from any of those states into New Jersey, you need to quarantine for 14 days before you can do anything. So there are no restrictions for people traveling. So we don't have any mandates in place for that because we can't really stop people from traveling if it's their choice.
What about playing? I mean, the restriction is okay, not traveling, but let's say a New Jersey team want to come and have a scrimmage in Howard County, and we have a field there, for example. So that's no restrictions, right?
There's no restrictions unless that not for Maryland, but if you have a team and you want to go to New Jersey, then you're going to have to abide by the New Jersey jurisdiction. If you go to, so anybody coming into Maryland, there's currently no restrictions. They could come in, they play. Now, if they're under restrictions from their own state,
from traveling,
right? So if I'm in New Jersey and they say, hey, anybody that goes outside of New Jersey has to quarantine. If that's their policy, then they have to abide by that policy. However, I don't think that's in.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's essentially anybody coming into Maryland, there's no restrictions right now other than your local county guidelines.
Right.
You know, so if somebody comes into Montgomery County, they have to abide by the Montgomery County government guidelines. So, and then obviously, depending on if you're going to play outside, I believe it may be Carroll County that said that, you know, I was talking with EDP, they mentioned that there's a 30-mile radius. They can't go in or out and play. So, so they have to play games within that radius, and they can't bring teams in from outside of that radius. So that is the only current county that I know of that has that restriction in place. So again, it's back down to each county.
Jason has a question, but Jessica, our registration specialist, isn't on the call, but he wanted to know about the monthly service fee on Got Sport merchant account. Does anybody know anything, or we'll have to get back to him on that when Jessica is back online with us?
Yeah, I think Jessica did address that with Got Sport, and I think there was one other club that saw that fee on there. And I know between Jess and Got Sport, they were working through that to figure out what exactly that was, because there is a third-party vendor that they use for the invoicing piece. So I know she's on top of that.
Just quickly, Pat Noel, thanks, Pat. Pat's added the link to the Maryland Travel Advisory. So some coaches have been tested coming back from outside of the state. So I'm guessing, anything to add on that, Pat, possibly? Don't forget to unmute, Pat. I'll throw you under the bus. But travel advisory, link is in the WhatsApp group. Is that you, Pat? I think with internet.
Trying to talk, but it's not coming.
Well, he's on mute, so it's not.
No, I think it's internet. It's broken up.
Yeah. All right. Tudor has a statement that said DC has a 14-day quarantine when returning from 27 states for non-essential travel.
Okay.
You can clearly see that everything is like just crazy.
All over the place.
All over.
It's very crazy now.
I think the travel advisories, Nathan's not on the call, so I think we do have something on the website, but we'll make sure that that's added this week for DC and Maryland. So just maybe a link to the advisory boards so you can check the status of those. We'll probably add them to the counties page, maybe, if that's something that we can do this week or so.
Yeah.
On a positive note, our operations manager, Nathan Meadows, is getting married tomorrow. So if you guys have his email address, you can always send him a congrats. That would be nice.
Right.
Also send him a $100 gift card.
Yeah, don't forget to call him around about 12 p.m.
During his honeymoon.
I got last question, please.
Sorry, the meeting's over.
Yeah, I know.
Julio, real quick, Julio, I just
Yes,
want
ma'am.
to know, we're following up with the patches for the World Cup to see, and I'm working with, I'm actually going to be on a host committee call for 2026 with Baltimore. So we're going to work with them through that to see whatever Baltimore gets regarding the World Cup. They think it's a great idea. So hopefully maybe we can put, a little contest to design the patch or something.
That would be great.
We are looking at that moving forward. I haven't forgotten about it.
Thank you, ma'am. Also, I was trying to get into their website to put my club, to support, and I couldn't. I don't know what happened there.
Just the last one from me as well. I was probably going to bring it up at the next call, but I've been working on a grassroots curriculum. It's basically a curriculum manual with a lot of the USSF, grassroots content. I'm putting it together in a Google Classroom. I'm not sure if that's the format that we're going to use in the end, but really it's going to be centered for club leadership. So if you have a rec director or if you have a youth director, anybody that's kind of working with kids up till probably under 12, under 13. So it'll have practice plans in there, in the play, practice, play methodology. I'm hoping to add some social distance type sessions in there, but it'll have a curriculum manual. And essentially I'm centering it around the 6 tasks. So we'll have things in there, sort of centered around how to, information that you can send out to your coaches on how to create a team meeting and some of the points to discuss at the team meeting. So it's going to be a resource center essentially for, all the member clubs that you can utilize to take information from and disseminate, distribute out to your coaches. Again, it's still in the infant stages, but I do want to try and get the first component out by probably next week or so. So hopefully on the next call, I'll do a 5 minutes or so just to walk you through it and show you some of the content and then how to join. Because it's, like I say, it's in a Google Classroom, so it's kind of a protected classroom. So you would need the information to log in and be able to utilize that. So again, just expect that coming on the radar within the next 7 to 14 days. The goal would be then, as we get into the season, to try and email out to all the coaches, recreational, travel, would be a week-to-week session plan based on 4v4, 7v7, 9v9, 11v11. And that would be for the duration of the season. So anybody that's in a club where there isn't really much leadership, those coaches are still getting access to the training sessions. But hopefully then, once we get coaching education back up, it will hopefully provide some intrigue. What is play, practice, play? How do we deliver it? What should I do as a coach? Can I learn more about it? And then hopefully we can start to continue the grassroots in-person courses with you as club leaders throughout your communities. So that should be available hopefully within the next week or so.
Lori Halpern was kind enough to put up on the chat the most recent out-of-state travel advisory. If you read it, it'll give you some up-to-date information. Probably will answer, Julio, your question. It's actually on the chat right now. Maybe, Alan, if you could put that on the WhatsApp.
Yeah.
That way it'll be up there all week. Thank you, Lori, for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark. It said as of July 29th, and they haven't taken it down.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it's still valid.
Hope so.
Hey, Mark. This is Dan again. 2 quick things. One, I know we just talked about the Baltimore World Cup 2026 bid. I am waiting to hear back from someone from the DC one because that affects obviously people in the DC area too. We're fortunate that we have 2 bids. So I've kind of shared with them what Terry did, and I'm just trying to find out who the best person. It may actually be somebody from our club that actually oversees like the actual stadium operations and stuff, because that is going to be one of the sites they use for things. And the other quick thing is just a reminder to everybody that MLS is back again, and that we at DC United we're going to begin with the match in Cincinnati on the 21st, and look for some information on that, or you can reach me directly. I just want to give people a heads up that that'll mostly be virtual stuff, but we're back playing and they're taking painstaking details for safety.
Thanks, Dan. And anybody else have any other questions they want to bring up before we sign off for this? Where we went over about 15 minutes, so I want to kind of close up. If not, appreciate everybody coming on board again. We'll have another webinar in 2 weeks. If you have anybody that you want to recommend as a guest speaker, please contact either me or Flo or Alan, and we'll definitely try to put them on. I hope everybody's enjoying these webinars because we're trying to give you as much support and information as we can muster up on this ever-changing landscape, which is driving us all crazy. Hopefully next time we talk in 2 weeks, they'll take soccer from a number 3 position down to medium, which is number 2. That would solve a lot of our problems in some of these counties. Other than that, you guys stay safe. Have a good 2 weeks until we meet up again, and we'll see you back. We'll see you back in 2 weeks.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.